Hey, everybody, welcome. This is ScottDPerron, and we have another great edition today of Getting Down to Business. And as you guys know, I try to do everything possible to promote business, to promote the community, and work with people I think are very influential. And today, I have a real treat. A young man that I met a few years back, actually in a networking meeting, and he is an attorney. He's been involved in all kinds of politics. I'm sure most of you probably recognize him, especially if you're from the Sarasota area. And today I want to welcome my friend, Erik Arroyo.
Great to see you. Thank you for having me.
Great to see you, pal. How's everything going?
Everything's great. You know, we're law practice and politics and all sorts of things. Family.
Yeah, right. You're all the way in. You're as deep into it as you can get, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
It's just never a dull moment.
I understand. Well, I was young once like you. I know it's hard to imagine looking at me today, but at one point I was young. Kids were young, just a new husband, starting businesses. And I admire what you've been able to do in a short period of time. And maybe you can kind of tell everybody, we kind of met through a whole networking thing with B&I.
Yep.
And then you kind of branched out and did something I had never seen an attorney do, which was call lots of business people together to come to the law office that you were working at the time and just network, coffee, donuts, and talk about business.
Yeah.
How did that all originate?
Basically, I was just hanging out with some friends, and other friends would stop by and realize that everybody has their own story. They have something to contribute. You have some business ideas that somebody else in a whole other realm could benefit from, you know, and you know, just something flourished, right? Friendships flourished. It wasn't really for business. We were doing it for just to make sure that our friends knew each other and we were networking. And it was a great thing that came out of it. Some of them still hang out.
Yeah,
today.
well,
I can't because of the kids, but
you understood. Yeah, you got that gap. You got to pay attention to what's going on now. There you go. Well, that was just it was refreshing because, you know, I've been in business a really long time and in all different facets of different things. And again, not to tease attorneys, but that's not generally the way they go about building their community.
Yeah.
Right? Business or otherwise. And you're right. You were not trying to sell anything. You were just trying to get people together to talk about business. In that, you invited folks to the office. You showed them around. You introduced them to some of your colleagues. You introduced them to the founder that happened to be the lead guy, Mr. Band.
Yeah.
And he was a character right out of the gate, just busted my chops.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, busted my chops the minute I went to his office. But that was really inspiring for me. And I've watched you grown since then. I've been in this market now. I moved here 12 years ago. We didn't meet that much longer after that. Probably known each other 8 or 9, maybe even 10 years now. And man, it's gone by quick.
It has.
Yeah, like a lot's changed for you as well.
Yeah. I mean, I started my own law practice and had my stint in politics, and you know, now I'm the guy that's like donating to elected officials, and I'm the guy that's sponsoring, you know, events at the chamber, and it's great. I mean,
the student has become the teacher.
Maybe. Still learning, still practicing, right?
No, you're never without being a student. So talk about your law practice, because I know you now formed one. Talk about what you're doing with that, what your specialties are, and what the goals are for the firm.
2 things. We do business law and we do estate planning. So we service trustees for trusts. We do probate. We do advanced directives, power of attorneys, probate, all that. That's most of our practice. Our goal is to, you know, be the best, you know, most efficient, most respected firm in the country, that we can help people mitigate taxes, that we can help them have peace of mind by helping them in their times of need when they're going through difficult situations. And we want to do it in a way that's you know, caring, that's compassionate, that you know, meets the needs of our community. I think, you know, that personal touch is sort of missing from the law. It's very, you know, it's very impersonal as of late. But a lot of people are retiring, and I think there's a real opportunity there to go into this realm that has less and less people able to do it right now.
More of a niche where service is the demand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so you don't want to be the largest personal injury firm in the world?
There's more money in it, I'm sure.
I'm sure there is. And, you know, that's a whole different ballgame, right? That's just a completely different area of the law.
It is. And I never liked it. You know, I've tried, you know, I worked with the courts in the past. I don't like criminal law. I don't like personal injury. You're always, you know, dealing with people who aren't paying attorney's fees, but they call you every day because, everything is covered because you're getting a percentage at the end, and they always think they have a bigger case than that they do. In family, they say that there's a saying that in family law, you have what are normally good people at their worst. And in criminal law, you have what are normally bad people at their best.
Right.
So you're dealing with, and I wanted to avoid both of those situations.
Neither one of those sounded good to you.
I love estate planning, what I do, because it's not a one and it's not a one-off. It's not, we're here for an accident or a divorce or this, and then we're done. It's a lifelong friendship that you form, especially with the businesses too. And they call me for everything, and then they show me pictures of their kids and grandkids. And by the time, my client or the family, one of the family members dies, I get to meet the family who I feel like I've known for the longest time.
Yes.
And I think that's truly a beautiful thing. It's been the most rewarding experience I've had.
Well, I've had many opportunities where I needed an attorney in my life, and I got to say that you've been selfless a lot of times with just a small snippet. It wasn't about you. Not that you don't need to charge for services, but you didn't turn the meter on and off for a 2-minute answer or something. You're very kind, and that speaks volumes, because I understand what you have to sell is time, but in this business, it's also kind of relationship. And everything a lawyer does with a client for the most part has some kind of a personal thing, but wills, trust, probates, that's very emotional as well, right?
Yeah,
and
it's talking about death.
You're talking about death or planning for it, right? And as if it's what's interesting to me is that nobody thinks they're going to die, right? Like it's going to be the other guy. And I haven't seen anybody get out of this life alive, right? So you would think, and fortunately, back when my wife and I lived in Connecticut, we had a trust formed. But then we moved to Kansas City, and the laws were a little different, and we had it revised. And then we moved to Florida, and this was before I met you, we had it revised. It's always a fluid thing that you got to keep moving or changing. And the young man that helped us with it is now elderly. He's got some health issues, and he's now kind of passing his torch on to different people. Person, and I understand how.
Is he trying to sell his practice?
Well,
get me in touch.
Yeah, I'm going to put you guys together. I would rather than mention his name, I'll put you in touch after. But he's a super guy, and he really cared about the people on the other end. And talk a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people don't realize what's involved and the pieces of the puzzle when it comes to wills, trusts, and probates with advanced directives, your living will, and not just your will, but all these other things, especially tied to your healthcare.
Yeah. So a couple of things. When should you be looking at your estate plan? I formulated the 6 Ds, right? Every decade, when you move somewhere, when you have a new domicile, when there's a death or a birth, when there is a divorce or a marriage, when there is a disability or a decline in mental capacities or physical, and when there are different laws, when the laws change. So that's when you really should be looking at this. When we talk about an estate plan, we mean if you died, the only way to pass your assets, if you own something in your name only, the only way to transfer the name to someone else's is really through the courts, through a process called probate. So it's a lengthy process. It's inefficient. I don't recommend it. But you can avoid it in a number of ways. You can title assets with someone and have a right of survivorship, or you can put it in a trust. So the strategies are all in there. So we talk about avoiding probate, wills, a will, and a trust. But then we also plan for emergencies, and that's what they call advanced directives. And that usually involves a power of attorney, a healthcare surrogate, a living will, a pre-need guardian. And a living will is remember Terry Schiavo, the Terry Schiavo case.
Yes.
It's basically doctors can't let you die unless they use up your entire bank account is what it is.
Right.
And so
the meter's running again. Yeah.
And you have to say, and there has to be a document that says, I want to die with dignity. I mean, I don't fear death, but the futility of keeping me alive through an artificial heart and lung, and you're treating new things that are emerging when I'm already brain dead, doesn't make sense. Secondly, we talk about pre-need guardian. And in Tampa Bay, in our region, we are the elder abuse capital of the world. Why? Because some of the people that I've seen, they become widowers, And then they go to these restaurants that are just stomping grounds for gold diggers. And the gold diggers will be, they'll start sleeping over. They'll start moving in, doing groceries. Then they say, you know what? I want that bank account. And anybody in the world can challenge your mental capacity and open up a court case to become your guardian. And if the court agrees, they get access to your everything. They are your guardian, like your parent.
Yeah.
And
I've seen it happen.
We see it happen so many times. So pre-need guardian says, if anyone challenges my ability to take care of myself, these people take precedent. And so pre-need guardian, living will, the healthcare surrogate is giving someone the ability to make healthcare decisions for you and to get HIPAA powers. They can go and get your health information. I used to work at a pharmacy at Walgreens, and I remember, mom came in. Her daughter had just turned 18. She wanted a list of all her medicines. It's like, I can't give it to you. She's an adult. HIPAA took place now, and it's just not something I can give you.
Right.
But so something recommended for your kids if you want to know what they're doing, but also if you wanted to appoint someone to make these decisions for you. So anyway, it's fascinating stuff. I love it. I could talk about it all day.
So if I read up on this. We've had a little bit of experience with it over the last several years. Talk about what an intestate thing is. And there's something I read too, that if you have nobody to leave it to, the state gets it. It's called like encheatment or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember
as she says.
Yeah, it's like cheating. But talk a little bit about
feels like cheating,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Because I think a lot of people just assume if someone passes away, everything just goes to the next of kin. No harm, no foul. It all just rolls that way.
Yeah, but the thing is that people don't realize is that sure, if you don't have an estate plan in place, the state of Florida has one for you, and it doesn't just descend down. It's not just to your descendants. Heirs can flow up. So a grandfather, second cousin twice removed, could, in theory, be an heir. And so, let me tell you two things. For one, there's a movie called Mr. Deeds, which I love, and it's with Adam Sandler, and he is like some small town guy who I think cleans the streets, and he finds out that he's connected to some guy, a billionaire who died, and he has no kids, no wife, nobody, and this guy who's the small town guy who cleaned the streets is like his heir, his sole heir. He inherits like a helicopter, a butler, a mansion, and that's what happens when you don't have a will. And then I was like, you know what? That doesn't happen in real life. Well, I had it happen. This lady passed away in Venice. It wasn't billions of dollars, but passed away in Venice. Had no children, no husband, no parents, no siblings, no grandparents. So we came to find out there are companies out there that are actively looking for heirs, and they say, you know what? I found someone that may be related to you, and if I find that money for you, we get 20%.
Sure.
And they do that. And so this lady died. 26 different people came out of the woodwork trying to claim to be this lady's cousins. They had never even met. They had never met her. It was insane trying to verify everybody, getting a genealogy report in place. It is such a bizarre experience, but I never want to go through that experience again, trying to get all those people basically ratified. And by the way, it got to the second paternal grand uncle twice removed. When you get to the grandparent level, let's say, for example, you're looking at, let's say there's the grandparent have 4 siblings, right? With the laws of intestacy, you died intestate, it's all 4 grandparents would have 25%, right?
Okay.
So if one is alive, he gets 25%. But if the other one is passed, then his share would be split among his children and his children. So it was the weirdest mathematical equation. One person got 25%, the other one got 6.5, this 12, this 13, 17. It was the most bizarre thing. And they were fighting over money that they really weren't and shouldn't have been entitled to. And they were fighting over someone they had never met.
Right. And all the while, that person could have thwarted all that by just simply making a will.
Yes.
And I think people think a will has to be some dramatically large document. It doesn't necessarily need to be, right? In order to be legal, it can be fairly simple, right?
It can be very simple. You can, in Florida, say holographic wills. So if you handwrite a will, it's not valid, but they can be valid. Of course, I've seen those be valid. Um, just, who do you want your personal representative to be, an executor? Where do you want your stuff to go? That's it. Everything else is extra. Sure, you can put in there that you want to be cremated. And I've seen some weird, you want to be turned into a seed. Do you want to be your ashes spread over Sarasota Bay? Do you want to be, I've seen
the bowling alley.
Yeah,
Right.
I want to be turned into a fire, a firework and just blown up,
whatever it takes.
People do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So everything else is extra. You'd be an organ donor if you would if you want to make any specific gifts, if you would like.
You have specific things you want to go to somebody, this is where you iron that out. And to me, it's got to, for me and for Sally, and of course, when we first started with this, it was really because we had kids. It was more about what would happen if we both died and the kids were going to be taken care of, and, who would be taking care of them and all that stuff, especially when they're little. Now they're both, grown adults. So it's just, I don't know how to put it. It's a weight off your chest when you walk out of that office. Everybody thinks you're planning your death, and you're really not. You're planning to make someone else's life much easier, especially those who are emotionally attached to you if you have a family. And when we walked out of that office that first day, I went, man, I just feel better, like I did something good. And, hopefully the bus isn't aiming for me right now, and it wasn't. But I think people just take it the wrong way, and they feel like if I succumb to putting a will together, I'm asking for death. It's just the craziest thing.
Yeah, I've seen,
and you're going to get death either way. So what's the difference?
Yeah, you're getting death either way. I've seen some horror stories. It's best to just make sure that your stuff goes where you want it to. Just for the sake of your family. I've seen families torn apart after one passes, and I
had a situation, a family member, they were literally arguing over a ladder. Who's going to get the ladder? Really? And you're standing there thinking that, okay, I feel like I'm a fairly reasonable person. Why don't I just go there and give them the $50 each, and they can each go buy a half ladder or one ladder or whatever they want to do. It was driving me crazy. I don't know. I feel differently about that than I guess other people do.
Yeah. It keeps families
more about
together.
Principle. I get it. So the difference between that now and a trust, quickly, because a lot of people, again, don't know. We have a trust. So what's a trust different than just having
a trust? Is nothing more than just a gift. But the gift isn't from me to you. It's from me to an intermediary, a trustee, that holds it for your benefit.
Okay.
So the beautiful thing is when you create a trust that is revocable, meaning you can change it at any time. I'm the giver of the gift. I'm the holder of the gift, and I'm also the receiver of the gift. You can have a trust where you're all three parties. The magic happens when someone passes away. The trust continues to live on. So your house is in the name of the trust. So whoever the trustee is will have authority to sell that house and manage it and do whatever the trust document says. So you said, when I pass away, I want this person to be my trustee. It can be a spouse. It can be anyone. There are professional trustees, attorneys, CPAs. There's trust companies, and the banks have their big trust departments. So let's say you pass, the trust continues to live. That person or that entity will manage the trust according to your wishes. And then you'll list the successor beneficiaries as well. So you say, if I'm no longer around, it goes to my wife. If she's no longer around, it goes to my kids. And I've seen it. If you look at the Rockefellers, are famous for this. What they did is they had this trust, and it was funded when one of the Rockefellers died and the money went in. And then the trustee, which is a professional trustee, would then take, let's say there's 3 kids, and put life insurance policies on all 3 kids. And when they died, they're replenishing the trust. And then for the next generation, the grandkids, and then the trustee will put a life insurance policy on all those grandkids, and then that'll replenish the trust. And they've kept it going for generations.
That is amazing. And it's also, is it used? So for example, let's say you have a child and you don't want them, let's say you have $100,000 you're going to leave that child. You don't want them to get it all at once. They don't want
that too,
right? 10,000 a quarter or 25,000 every 3 years or whatever. So they don't blow it all, or not so much blow it all, but maybe even somebody else gets their hands on it. Right. So that's important there too. Cause I think a lot of people, that's one of their big concerns. What if I leave this person all this money or all this asset or even all this responsibility all at once?
Yeah. There's a concept called the dead hand. You don't want to control too much, but but for the most part, yeah, you can say the kids don't have they're not good with money. So you have to, when you start school or when you start a business, when you get married or when you reach certain age milestones, that's when you get the money. I had a lady, she set up this trust in 1988 in New Jersey. She said, I give my two daughters $2 million each, except that you can touch the first million, you can live off of that. But the second million, you get to touch that when you raise your children in the Jewish faith. These ladies are, one of them passed, but but was in her late 60s, had no children. Creates an issue. And then it created a family friction, because if she died without kids, which she didn't, that share would go to the other siblings, right? So
so it can get complicated.
One was trying
and that's what you're there for.
Yes.
To advise them, good or bad, whether that makes sense. Because ultimately it's their decision, but you're going to kind of guide them down the road and say,
of course. Yeah. And a lot of the time, you spend so much money litigating things. You spend it giving it to the state, or giving it, or paying taxes, or paying lawyers, when you could have helped society. One of my favorite,
smooth things out. Yeah.
You could have helped better the world. For example, when I was in college, I received a thing called the Pell Grant. That was the Pell family. They left it, and every child, first person without means, first to go to college, they get the Pell Grant. 911, entirely funded by a private foundation. When Benjamin Franklin amended his will one last time in 1790, a couple of years before he died, and he said, I leave to the cities of Philadelphia and Boston $2,000, but you can't touch it over. That you can only touch it after 100 years. And it was to fund public works, the cities, but also orphans, and teaching children the trades, and single mothers
to do good works. Yeah.
That fund right now has over $12 million in it. And it has given away way more than $12 million over the years, because they couldn't touch it until, almost 1900.
Right.
And it's amazing. So private philanthropy is amazing. And a lot of the time we spend so much money litigating, when the money could have gone, not to 26 different cousins, but to a good cause of I love my foundation work. It's a trust basically, but for the good of society. It's for philanthropic uses. And it's the way of the world. So much has been shaped because of that.
So before we get off the most negative subject we're going to talk about today, which is death and planning your death and all that, and that really isn't the subject that I'm trying to play, but I really want people to understand about not only what you guys do, but the benefit of that across the board. Talk a little bit about probate, why people don't like probate, especially financially, against their estate.
Well, look, the Florida statutes say that an executor, which in Florida we call a personal representative, is entitled to a percentage of your estate. Same for the attorney. The fees, that says it's reasonable to charge a fee. And then the courts charge their fee. It's also very public. You have to file a notice to creditors, all creditors, known and unknown, saying in a newspaper of local circulation twice, you have to pay and say, you know what, if this person died, if they owed you money, let me know. And then you have to, and it's a court case. I mean, you have to go in front of the court. You have to seek permission to do to sell a house, to sell a house, to distribute income to somebody that was relying on that person who was deceased. And it's just a slow, inefficient, costly, it's almost like the federal government. I mean, it's
Enough said.
So
try to avoid it at all costs.
It's everything. Yeah. It's everything you don't want. So a trust is private. There's no court involvement, and even though it's more expensive to set up, it's less expensive than probate
in the long term.
In the long term, yeah.
Yeah, and you made me laugh because I remember my very first attorney when I was a kid. My dad had a guy that was our personal attorney, and they were friends growing up, and he literally stayed in our family. When I left Connecticut is what last time Bob Cohen is his name, great guy. And he would laugh every time I'd go do a closing with him or something. And we'd sit there, and he was kind of just a joker. Mm-hmm. And he'd read through a closing and say, and we're doing this, that, and the other thing, and reasonable attorney's fees, as if there were such a thing. And every time he'd come to that line, he'd say that. And people sometimes are just not focused on what he's saying. They're listening to that. And then finally, after maybe the third time, the other party would start laughing and realize, as if there were and he was breaking chops a little bit, but there was a little truth to that too, as long as what you're saying with the probate system. So let's move on, because that's, and by the way, before we do, and we're going to have a little break in this, talking about your law firm, putting up the website and everything to promote you guys. But what's the name of the law firm and where are you located?
We have an office in downtown Bradenton and downtown Sarasota. We operate with remote offices in Tampa and St. Petersburg as well. We have a group of attorneys that are some are of counsel and some are just with us. A team of about 8. 2 paralegals. We're acquiring law practices of people who want to transition their practices along. So the firm is called Arroyo MCARDLE. Our website is fladvisor.com, so floridaadvisor.com. And that's what we do. We do primarily business, primarily estate planning, law, and we've been doing it for a while. Most of us were raised here, went to high school here.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to take a little break here. We've got Erik Arroyo from law offices of Arroyo and MCARDLE, FL Advisor, FloridaAdvisor.com. Great short website title, because so many people drag these things out. That's good for marketing. And we'll be right back after this on Getting Down to Business. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Getting Down to Business. This is ScottDPerron, and we've had a great first segment here with Mr. Erik Arroyo, phenomenal attorney, good guy, great networker, and I want to talk to him about the main subject that I wanted to talk about before we talk about business, because this is Getting Down to Business, and I know you love all these subjects. Let's talk politics.
Okay.
And you have had a pretty great run, actually, as a young man in this market. In fact, you were mayor.
Yeah.
Right. You were a commissioner.
Yep.
And I know you just had the bid and you didn't, didn't get reelected this time around, but I was telling the young man that's doing the production here today, in order to win, you must lose every once in a while. And, it's politics. I don't understand it. It's not something I want to do, meaning it's not something I want to throw my hat in the ring. So I give you credit. A lot of people think politics for people is just about power and money. It's not. And I know you to be the guy that's always trying to do stuff for the community. And it's, before we even go to that, how did you end up becoming a lawyer and then wanting to be into politics? Was this always something in your blood? You loved history, you loved political science, that whole thing? Or did you somehow one day just snapped and said, this is what I want to do?
I was always fascinated with politics. I majored in political science. So that was telling. I was really interested in being represented in local politics. The fact is, Congress is representative of their generation, right? That's why we have these policies that really don't take into account young families. That's why the biggest issue I think we have right now is affordable housing, because individuals that are elected they don't have to worry about that, right? The working class is not being represented. I was the youngest person elected in the city of Sarasota ever.
Yes.
I was 30 years old. I'm 34 now. And
you're ancient.
But when I left the city commission, the youngest person, aside from me, the second youngest person, was 22 years older than me.
Wow.
You have 3 individuals in the city commission that are over 70 years old. It is bizarre. And I wanted representation for young families, for people who were raised here, who work here, who employ people here, and have they have different struggles. More than just, I don't want this building coming up next to me, or I'm concerned that downtown is too loud, or I'm concerned that,
right, too much progress.
Yeah,
too much
traffic.
Progress. Well, and I know it's been written in the papers that you're developer friendly, but what does that mean? Does that mean you're looking for progress? Does that mean you're looking to update things? I was saying to the guys here today, this was always kind of a small town, but then Sarasota gets on the map. You get Siesta Key. I mean, we've had some storms. Listen, we're going through some havoc. It happens. I lived in Kansas. I lived in Oklahoma. We had tornadoes. We had destruction all the time. People just pick up, fix things, move on. nor'easters, all kinds of issue, right? Wherever you go, you are not immune to storms. And that doesn't mean that Florida is not the place to come or Sarasota is not the place. It's been many decades and in fact, 100 years maybe since we've had any kind of devastation like that. People pick up and they fix things and they move on. But there's nothing wrong with progress and updating. I mean, some people were, MFing these roundabouts.
Yeah.
Once you learn how to go through it, you're fluid.
And they
right?
and they work. And
Yeah,
they
they
work.
work.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because here's the thing. There's a difference between county and city government. Municipal government, you don't have development like you do out in East. It's not like Lakewood Ranch. Everything's already built. You're
Right.
having redevelopment of existing structures. And local government, like when you buy a building or a commercial building, it's already entitled to be a commercial building. So you
Right.
can
Zone that way. Yeah.
It's zoned. It's already entitled. Never has the decision been, do we allow a building or not?
Right.
So
Right.
right? It's like, what do we want? Do we want more residences in there, or do we want more commercial in there? Can we work with them in some way, give them more density in exchange for some affordable housing? And that is always the push and pull. So that's what they don't tell you. My opponents love to throw that around. Oh, these developer friendly. Listen, we're going to grow as a city, no matter what.
Yeah. If you're not growing, you're dying.
Yes.
Right?
And what they wanted to do is say no, 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 no. But no matter how many times you said no, something's getting built.
Right. Something's
They
getting rehabbed,
are
something's getting
entitled to it. And
Yes.
if any local government takes that away from them, they can sue the local government. It's called the Burt-Harris Act in Florida. So, I think that there's a huge misconception about what it means to prepare for the future and what local elected officials actually do. And I think, when we realize that, I think young people realize that, people with families, it's never, no, are we not going to grow? It's how do we grow responsibly? How do we make it so that instead of having just a purely commercial building downtown, we have at least some residences? And I'd rather have some residences than an entirely commercial building.
I couldn't agree more. And, these are subjects that are important. In my line of work, I'm involved with a lot of realtors, a lot of property management companies. And I work with guys like Eric Shumway over at Remax Alliance, and the Embry boys over on Fruitville, and the Robbins boys, and, just a lot of great people in that organization who are providing what's going on. What's happened downtown, the Robbins guys have been uniquely, involved, the BB&T building and redoing of the old theater and the government.
I don't know how they do it. They're doing a great job.
It's amazing. And it's a new generation. And I've had Kevin on my audio podcast. I'd love to get the boys all on one podcast for video here and getting down to business and talk about that. And they've been instrumental in bringing, to your point, new generation ideas into this city where they've been many years. And those guys are 3 generations in. The grandfather started that business.
Yeah.
Right. And the Embry guys, same thing. Joe Jr. and Kyle, good guys, young guys, just energizing new stuff coming in with a different outlook. And Joe Embry Jr., for example, very politically connected, wants to know what's going on in the real estate world, how it's going to impact values. And I don't think people really understand that. If you come into this city and you buy a piece of property, you don't want things that are going to happen that are going to then ruin the value of your property because you're not allowing it to happen or understanding it, which is even worse. And so I think I give you a big thumbs up on that. You got in the game early. My son was a young, maybe a teenager. He worked on your campaign initially when you first got elected. He was excited about that. He's a big time conservative, Republican, loves business. I will tell you, I'm in the middle of the fence. I voted for both sides. I don't really hang my hat on either party. I like to vote for the best person. And when I was in Kansas City, not that this is of interest to you, but I met a guy named Greg Orman, and Greg was running for Congress in Kansas City. Very sharp young guy out of Princeton. One of those Richard Gere types, buying and selling companies, doing that kind of thing. Amassed a fairly decent financial portfolio, and then wanted to go into politics. He's brilliant. He's one of these guys who's just very brilliant. And if I had one, it's not a criticism of Greg. I think the average person doesn't understand what he says and how smart he is about it. So it's almost not dumbing it down, but it's bringing it down to the local level and in layman's terms, how to explain something to people. But he has some great ideas, and he'd been on both sides of the aisle. So he came up with something called the Common Sense Coalition, and I was on their advisory council. And it was just me with my stupid ideas, the way I think about business, as just a way to interject my opinions. He had people from all different walks of life and all different levels of business on that advisory council. And I thought that was also very telling, very similar to your networking thing. getting ideas from all different people, from everybody, every platform, and then using it to formulate your ideas on how to go forward.
I wanted to do something like that here. But in Florida, we have the sunshine law. So anything that's government related is subject to any random person, basically. And I had my political enemies asking for my emails, my text messages on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And it's a public record. Here you go. This is who I texted. This is what we talked about. This is, and I didn't want to subject people that did not sign up for that.
That's fair. Yeah, the
laws,
privacy. Let them have
right?
privacy, right?
Because they would be like, oh, if what they discuss at the meeting is subject to sunshine, they would argue that I want to see what these two people were discussing, and I just wanted to avoid that. But I thought that was a great idea, and I wanted to do it.
So, what are your thoughts about the political climate we're in now? Obviously Donald's been reelected. He's going wild. Today's events are who he's putting on his list of being confirmed, right? And creating these new entities of, Department of Government Efficiency and all this other stuff. But I think he's listen, I'm going to say publicly, I don't love him. Yeah. Some of the things he does, I would not want to be teaching my kids to do. But when you have to look at what's going on in this country and what the hot buttons have been for people and what's affecting the average person, I get it. I get why he got reelected. I understand it. And when you only have two people to choose from, even if you don't like one or the other, you've got to say, okay, at the end of the day, what do I think is going to be best for my family, best for our future, best for the country? You can't be thinking just about yourself. And I think that's what ended up happening here. It's an overwhelming victory. All the swing states, popular vote, the whole nine. What are your thoughts about what's happening and what you think not necessarily the immediate results going to be, but the long-term results?
I think the long-term results are going to be vast. I think it's going to be so impactful to our quality of life because what we did was, think of it this way. We have $35 trillion. That's our deficit.
That's the one that hits me, buddy. That's the one that hits me.
We had 10 just 4 years ago.
I know.
We had 10. More money has been printed in the last 4 years than ever in history. And then we're wondering why there's so much inflation. Oh. It's the supply and demand. There's so much supply that because everybody was like, you know what? Because of COVID, we're going to do these programs. We're going to do, and then they took advantage of it. And they're going to say, we're going to print more because we want to just give money. We just opened the printing press.
Yes,
and we're feeling the effects of it now. What you could buy in 2019 with $100 in groceries now costs you $150.
Yes.
The Wall Street Journal wrote about that. So I think we just need to, pump the brakes. I think we need to get a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution, to be honest with you. I think we need to get printing under control. I think we need to, the Department of Government Efficiency, that's going to be a big one. Right now the interest.
It's such an oxymoron, too. That
everybody's like, oh my God, we have the largest military. We have a larger military than the next 30 other countries combined, 29 of who are allies of us.
Right.
And so people say, the military is so, why are you spending so much in the military? Not getting into the merits of that, but right now, our interest on our debt is more than the military, than what we spend on the military.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
So we really need to get that under control. I think this was the way, I don't think Kamala Harris had what it takes to make it happen. And the thing that is very telling about this, the fact that she didn't have what it takes, was the fact that her campaign now is bankrupt.
Right.
It's $20 million. They overspent it by $20 million. And
you're going to do that in a campaign. What are you going to do when you get the keys?
And they're still calling donors like, hey, we lost the campaign.
Yes.
Now we need you to cough up some more dollars to get us out of the hole. Like, that is just irresponsible.
It is.
And I feel like, I don't care which party does it, but they need to get it under control.
And again, to say this, I always speak my mind, whether people I got friends that the sun rises and sets on Donald.
Yeah.
I got friends that it's the opposite for Kamala Harris because of their views and helping people and so on. And somewhere in the middle in my mind is always the truth, right? Like everything else. But again, at the end of the day, you got to sit down with that ballot in your hand and say, okay, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at this and I got it really in my heart. Don't make an emotional decision. Think it all the way through. It's something I tell my wife, my kids all the time, people in general. Think your decision through all the way through. What's it going to look like? Not just a week from now or 2 weeks. How about 6 months? How about 6 years? How about 10 years? How about when your kids are having their kids? What will matter? And that sometimes, and that it slows me down, because as a young man, I made really impulsive, fast decisions, thinking I know every damn thing. And I found out I didn't know very much, right? And even now at this, I'll be 60 years old next year. I don't know very much. And I constantly trying to get more and more information from the folks that mentor me, folks I mentioned before in the real estate community. When I came in this town, and not to talk about myself, just to make a point, one of my buddies says, you and Sally, my lovely wife, Sally, who all of you know is much better looking than I am and clearly has bad eyesight because she picked me. But when we parachuted into this town, which my buddy said all the time, you parachuted into Sarasota, opened a brand new business and made it successful. No, we parachuted into town. We started meeting people that mattered. And what I found is maybe we have 500,000 people in the greater trade area. 500 or 1,000 of those people are connected to everything. And that's the true meat of it. So when you go to a BNI group, which is where I met you and how we started our business, it was a ground level exercise to meet and shake hands. And I love belly to belly marketing. I love doing what you and I are doing right now, having a conversation, looking each other in the eye. I'm old school. These text messages and all that, for me, it's not my thing, but I do it. But I'd rather do this because I get to know you. We look at, we can trust each other, develop a friendship or a relationship at least, and then move forward. And I found if you do that with the right people for the right reasons, they will plug you in all the people you need. And that's what's happened with us. So yes, I'm happy. We have a great team. They've made our business great. But it isn't me. I lead to some degree, but really it was the people around us, the ones we plugged ourselves into. And whether that's political, whether it's business, whether it's friendship, it's kids' school, sports, whatever it happens to be, golf, fooling around, getting a cocktail, going to Tweeds and buying a shirt, whatever it happens to be. That was what made the business success. It's people. And nobody is more, I shouldn't say nobody. I feel like nobody is more plugged into wanting my vendors, clients, and friends to feel like we're doing the right thing for the right reason. Do we have to make a profit in our business? Of course. I can't, if I don't make a profit, I can't reinvest. I can't add benefits to people. I can't add people on. I can't advertise with all that. But it's all kind of a means to an end. And I'm not just counting the dollars. I'm counting the relationships, because for me, there's a lot of value in that. A lot of value in the relationships.
I think so. I agree. That's just that personal touch. I mean, I'm a big believer in handwritten notes, sending thank you cards, and that's just.
Oh, well, so that's a great story, right? You gave me a lead in. When I met Don Carlson from Tweeds, I wanted to have him on my podcast, and I'm thinking, this kid's growing. If I call him and say I want you to have some podcast, he's like, who are you? So I wrote a letter. Nothing fancy, just here you go, Don. I admire your company. You guys are growing. Love to have you on my podcast. Would you reach out to me? He calls me like a week later and goes, nobody sends a letter. Nobody sends a letter. Everybody's an email. Try to get his email address. Try to get his text message right. You got a better chance of seeing, the priest. I mean, it's just, it's not going to happen. But if you write a letter, if you take the time to be personal with somebody, why wouldn't they want to take the time to, it doesn't have to be a week later, maybe 2-3 weeks later, he calls me, hey, by the way, I get this letter. It's been sent to my desk, and we formed a friendship. I became one of his clients. He came and did a podcast, and now I touch base on a regular basis with these guys. Saw their catalog here in the green room of the production studio, right? They're everywhere, building a brand, opening more stores, and I'm proud to be part of that because he's a young man. He's got a great team there. I don't know if you've been over there, but a great team of guys, and they've got a culture they're building, and that's from the ground up. That's just, to me, that's super impressive. That's my whole line, is getting down to business. And man, if it isn't for relationships, building something like that, when you're going up against the big boys, you don't have enough money, right? So if it's going to take you money to out advertise everybody, that's what I say. I have, competitors like Floor and Decor and Tile Outlets and some big players in the market who go up against me. I don't have the deep pockets they have to throw money at advertising. So how am I going to get the business? I'm going to do it better. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to build a relationship, make sure people can trust me. It's a large ticket purchase. And if I screw it up, I got to back it up, right? I found that when you do that, it all works out. If you try to do it any other way in my industry, you're going to lose clients, and you're going to have to keep spending a lot of money to fill up that pipeline.
Yeah.
And you're probably in the same boat, right? Because there's a lot of lawyers that just, all it is one big ad on TV
Yeah.
nonstop. It never stops.
I don't even advertise.
Right. I know you don't. Everything's
We did one magazine thing, and that's it.
yeah. And honestly, it's because for the very reason I have you here today is because you are a people person. You're a networker. I don't think I don't think you realize how much you impressed me. And I'm an old kind of businessman, right? When I met you and I go, wow, that guy's an attorney. Oh, he's got a personality. No offense to other attorneys. Love you guys. We got to use you. But you got a personality. You're willing to welcome people in. You're willing to show them about you before you didn't ask for anything. And even though you're not in the same firm you started in, you built your own firm. Well, of course you did. Because people are going to gravitate towards that mentality. And those guys will be fine. Like, these are big firms.
I just had lunch with them. Yeah, they're all great.
And that's another reason, right? You're not enemies. You're not adversaries. You're all in the same line of work, and some way or another, you can help each other. I had one of my, I would call them competitors in this market, text me today and say, hey, do you have access to this product? Yes, I do. Well, can you get me a price on it? I need it and I don't have access to it. Of course I will. Why wouldn't I do that? Right? And some people say, why would you sell product to your competitor? Because he needs it. And I can help him out. And maybe if I need a favor and he's got something, I'm not fighting with these people. I'm trying to form a bond with them that I guess transcends money.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's that personal connection.
So we got a few minutes left. Talk a little bit about business here in Sarasota and what you see happening and what you like and what maybe you don't like and would like to see improved upon.
I don't like taxes. I don't like the fact that government is, I
vote for you right now.
No,
seriously,
right.
I'm teasing him.
What I didn't like in my government service was that government is always trying to grow. And unless you have elected officials who are that force that pushes back against government, it's going to continue to grow. Parking department had more than enough money. They were just like, nope, let's raise it so we generate $2 million more per year. Why? Just because we can. And so, and it happens everywhere. So I really don't like that. Because right now I feel like it's more attractive to go out by UTC than it is to have a business downtown. Why? Because we tax you to death. Not only do you have to pay for parking, you have to, the county has a business tax, but the city has a business tax. The property taxes are higher. It's just much more burdensome. And I think they're not really going to listen until things start getting boarded up. Maybe if that's when they, I feel like we just don't pay attention to the business community enough. So I'm excited about what's to come, right? I mean, we're growing, one of the best places to be, but fastest growing areas with Lakewood Ranch, best places to be in the country. I'm excited for everything that's coming. I mean, Top Golf, we have Corona Cigar coming into town. We have a Ocean Prime restaurant. We have some amazing amenities. So I'm excited for everything that's happening. Not excited for the government raising rates.
Well, and one of the things that's made us successful, and we got a little bit lucky with timing and, of course, learning from the mistakes we made in the past.
Yeah.
We came into town, we purchased a piece of real estate instead of leasing it. We kept our overhead low, operating out of an industrial area instead of high-profile retail area right out of the gate. And that would allow us, if we want to expand, then, okay, throw a showroom over here. But you've got the beast being fed without like not just overtaxing, but over costing, right?
Yeah.
What's the rent cost? Can you afford to make rent? And if you can't pay your rent and you can't pay your people, you're not going to be successful, right? So it's business 101. And it seems that no matter what's going on, everybody's got their hand in your pocket at some point, right? There's another thing. One of the things that really gets me aggravated is the sales tax.
Yeah.
Not that I have to pay sales tax, but the system in which you file it, right? It's antiquated, right? Listen, either tax everything or don't tax it.
Yeah.
Don't have all these different codicils. I understand exemptions for charities. I understand exemptions for churches and things like that. But there's certain things that make that law and those laws just antiquated. And it should be a real simple thing. This is how much you sold. That's the tax you collected. And that's what you owe. If you didn't collect it, sorry, you still owe it. You got to pay it. And then the penalties and all that, you got to take it. Now we've got it down to a science now, but it took a while. And in every state, it's different. And I really feel sometimes that they make those that crazy just so they can give other people jobs.
Yeah.
And like you said, just to grow government instead of really provide value, where the reverse would be true. If you simplified this process, business people especially would be so much more apt to want to do business. And especially if they can learn how to control costs, I don't want handouts either. I understand through the COVID thing, there was lots of money given. I get all that. I'm not looking for handouts. I just want an equal playing field.
Yeah.
on a level playing field against my competitor or against anybody else in business in the same area. That's all I want. Give me a level playing field. Let's go to work, right? Then we'll see the best man or woman wins. But if you change the level, right, then it makes it a lot harder for the smaller business people to be successful, and that's scary to me. That's scary.
Yeah, I mean, not only the sales tax, but they also have the commercial lease sales tax.
Right? And that's moving all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, it was 6.5, then 5.5. Now it's 2, but even it's a
And
mess.
I heard that was all because they lowered it all because they started to be able to tax online sales, get the sales tax revenue from what used to be able to, you weren't paying sales tax if you bought it online.
But we rented out a room
crazy.
in our building. We rented out a room, and we're like, you know what? We're collecting like $1,000 a month on it. Let's report it anyway, right? The tax is minimal. It's like $40. So you have to self-report. It's a self-reporting thing.
Yes.
And
God forbid you're late. Or
and
God
they wouldn't
forbid
even know. Yeah. And then they're telling me that I'm calculating my tax wrong. I was like, I chose to tell you this number. Now you're gonna tell me that this is wrong. And then when I didn't pay it because the lease ended with the people that we had in there, they're just like, no, you have to pay it. I was like, no, but I told you I don't have anybody in there, and it's a mess, and you have to be on the phone. It's the biggest headache, biggest bureaucracy. The state of Florida needs to update these systems. They just don't work.
Well, and especially when you have all different businesses doing all different ways of taxing. Certain things are taxable here, not taxable there. If I sell you material, I tax it. If I put it inside your real estate, it's not taxable. But I still pay the use tax.
Yeah.
So I pay the sales tax to my vendor on the wholesale side, which is called the use tax. But I don't charge you any tax as the consumer on the retail side if you install it. But if you don't install it, I got to tax you for the whole thing at the regular rate.
Yeah.
It's just so confusing. And just the manipulation of all those numbers. It's not that I don't want to pay.
Yeah.
I'll pay. I just want the system to be simplified. I know there's softwares that do that, but those have to be back checked. And God forbid you get audited, right? I went through that once. We were fine. But it's painstaking. It's wasting a lot of time that I could be taking care of customers, right? Instead of I'm worrying about whether I have 5 cents or 2 cents on a tax. So we got a couple minutes left. Tell people how to get a hold of you. I appreciate your time so much. We could go on for 5 hours. I feel like I could talk to you for the rest of my life.
Yeah, great catching up with you. I haven't seen you in a while. It's 2 kids and law practice. And
talk about how old the kids?
It's finally slowing down now. 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. 4-year-old daughter who beats up the 2-year-old son. And but he's big. I mean, they both weigh the same, even though he's 2. He weighs 35 pounds.
Oh, so it'll level off pretty soon.
Telling her she better be nice to her brother. So things are fine. Things are calm. I'm glad to be out of municipal government. I'm glad I can spend time with my wife, with family. I'm glad I get to play with my kids, drop them off whenever, then go to the office, work, do something I love. I don't have people yelling because they're hurt, personal injury, or people because they're going to go into jail. I don't have people yelling because they're getting a divorce. It's a happy thing. And even though sometimes we deal with sad things, it's still something that gives them peace of mind when it's resolved. Yeah. And so it's the best
and
area
you're
of the law.
You're adding value to
so my life has slowed down significantly, and I love every single part of it. So I'm here. I'm in this community. You'll see me. I'm probably biking through Sarasota. I'll go biking, and then I'll go to the gym, and then I'll go to the office. But I'm having fun.
Phone number at your office?
941-404-5987.
We will plug that in, and the website as we do the edits for the show.
You can go to lawyerlylawyers.com, or you can go to fladvisor.com.
I think we'd rather go with lawyerlylawyers.com. You actually own that URL?
I do.
Good for you. Well, hey, anything you can point to the real thing, there's nothing wrong with that. Any way to get clients in the pipeline, because the way you guys service them, they'll be happy no matter what. I appreciate your time today, sir.
It's a pleasure.
You're one of the
Great
best.
seeing you.
And this is Getting Down to Business. As you can see, we have some very high quality guests here. Thanks very much for listening. We'll get all the information from Mr. Arroyo on the website, on Spotify. This is Scott Perron, Getting Down to Business. Have a great day. Take care of your family. Stay healthy and make something good happen.